The day everything collapsed, I was not at home. I was not even in a dramatic situation. I was sitting in an ordinary office meeting, checking my phone under the table, and I saw a blog link that 6,000 people had already shared. The headline had my husband's name in it, and a woman's name, and the words, "Secret Family." I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and read every single word. And by the time I finished, I realized something that broke me completely. The life I had been fighting to protect, the marriage, the house, the image, the smiles, none of it was ever real. My name is Sandra Adeyemi, and this is the story of 11 years I can never get back.
My name is Sandra Adeyemi, and for 11 years, I smiled at people who had no idea I was dying inside. 11 years of perfect photos, perfect Sunday outfits, perfect dinner parties where I laughed at jokes while my hands shook under the table. People called us goals. They literally called us goals. Sandra and Daniel, that's the kind of marriage I want. Your family is so beautiful. You are so lucky. Lucky. I want you to hold that word in your mind as I tell you this story, because by the time I finish, you will understand what it really feels like when your whole life is a performance and the curtain finally comes down in front of everyone. Let me paint you a picture of what the world saw. We lived in a 4-bedroom duplex in Lekki Phase 1, Lagos. Not rented, owned, or so people thought. The compound was neat, tiles that gleamed, a black iron gate that swung open smoothly. A small garden in the front with trimmed bushes and a stone walkway that my mother-in-law once photographed and posted on Facebook with the caption, "My son is doing well. God is good." Daniel drove a black Toyota Prado. I drove a white Corolla, which he had given me on our 5th wedding anniversary with a big red bow on the bonnet and 50 of our friends watching and screaming. We had 2 children, Toby, who was 9, and little Amara, who was 6. Beautiful children, smart children, children who wore matching outfits to church every Sunday. Church. We never missed a Sunday. Daniel was even on the men's executive committee. I coordinated the women's fellowship catering unit. We were that couple, the one the pastor pointed to when he preached about Christian homes. From the outside, we were a testimony. We posted on Instagram maybe 3 times a week, family portraits, date nights, birthday celebrations. Daniel always captioned his posts the same way, "My world," with a heart emoji. And people would flood the comments, relationship goals, God when, this love is beautiful. I used to read those comments in the bathroom, sitting on the cold tiles, crying silently, so no one would hear me. Because they did not know. They did not know what happened after the gate closed. They did not know what I had been hiding for 11 years. And neither did I know the full truth yet, because the worst part of my story was still coming. What I'm about to tell you, I have never told anyone. Not my mother, not my sister, not my closest friend. But I cannot carry it alone anymore.
Let me go back to the beginning. I met Daniel Adeyemi in 2012. I was 24, fresh out of university. I had just gotten a job at a small marketing agency in Victoria Island, and I was proud of myself. First salary, first independence. I felt like my life was finally starting. Daniel was 30 at the time. He worked in real estate. He drove well. He spoke well. He knew exactly what to say and exactly when to say it. He walked into my life like an answer to a prayer I had not even finished saying. By the 2nd month, he was calling me every night. By the 4th month, he had met my parents. By the 6th month, he was talking about the future, our future, with so much confidence that I felt foolish to doubt him. My mother loved him immediately. She told me, "Sandra, don't let this one go. Men like this don't grow on trees." We got married in 2013. The wedding was big. Not extravagant, but big enough. 300 guests, asoebi in burgundy and gold, a rented hall in Ikeja, a photographer who took the kind of pictures that made everything look more beautiful than it really was. I remember standing at the altar, looking at Daniel and thinking, this is it. This is the life I prayed for. I was so naive. The first sign came 3 months after the wedding. It was small, easy to dismiss. I had cooked that evening, jollof rice, fried plantain, and peppered chicken because I was trying to be a good wife. I was still learning the house, learning his habits, learning what he liked. He came home late, later than usual. I had waited for him before eating because I thought that was what a good wife did. He walked in, dropped his keys, went straight to the fridge, opened it, stared at it for a long moment, then said without turning around, "There's no cold water." That was all he said. Not, "The food smells good," not, "Thank you for waiting," not even, "Hello," just, "There's no cold water." I told him I would put some in the freezer. He said nothing. He sat down, he ate, he watched his phone, he went to bed. That night, I lay beside him in the dark and told myself it was nothing. He had a long day. He was tired. All men could be difficult sometimes. I told myself that a lot in the years that followed. It was nothing. He is tired. All men are like this. But here is the thing about small signs. If you ignore them long enough, they grow. By 2015, we had Toby, a pregnancy that I carried almost completely alone because Daniel traveled frequently for work and was rarely home. But the neighbors saw him bringing gifts when he returned. The neighbors saw him carry Toby on the naming ceremony day while I stood beside him smiling. The neighbors took photos and posted them and said, "What a father." What they did not see was the night before the naming ceremony, when Daniel and I argued so bitterly in our bedroom that I sat on the bathroom floor for 2 hours, clutching my newborn son to my chest, shaking. We had argued because I found a receipt. It was tucked inside one of his trousers that I was preparing to wash. A hotel receipt, Wheat Baker Hotel, Ikoyi, 2 nights, stamped 3 weeks before during one of his so-called work trips to Abuja. But Wheat Baker is in Lagos. He had not been in Abuja. I confronted him calmly. I showed him the receipt. I asked him to explain. He looked at it. He looked at me. And then he did something I was not prepared for. He laughed. Not a guilty laugh, not an embarrassed laugh. A slow, deliberate laugh that said, "You do not want to do this right now." He said, "Sandra, do you know what tomorrow is? The naming of my son. My family is coming. Your family is coming. Pastor Emmanuel is coming. You want to start drama the night before?" I said, "I just want to know where you were." He said, "I was with a client, a very important client who lives in Lagos. I told you about that." He had not told me anything. He said, "You always do this. You always find a way to ruin important moments. Is this how you want to raise our son, with suspicion?" And before I could answer, he took the receipt from my hand, looked at it once and dropped it in the bin. Then he walked to the bed, lay down and went to sleep. I stood in the middle of the room holding my son, and I thought, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe I should wait and ask when things are calmer. I waited. I never asked again. And that silence, that single act of choosing peace over truth, was the beginning of everything that destroyed us. What would you have done if you were me? 3 years passed. 3 years of what I can only describe as a careful performance. Daniel and I were not at war. We were not in love either. We were 2 people running a household and raising children and maintaining an image that we had both somehow silently agreed to protect. We did not fight loudly anymore. We barely argued. We spoke in polite sentences. What do the children need? I'll be home late. There's food in the pot. In public, Daniel was charming. He held my hand at events. He called me my wife with warmth in his voice. He posted birthday tributes that made people cry. People said to me, Daniel really loves you. And I would smile and say, yes, he does. That smile was the most exhausting thing I ever did. In 2018, Amara was born, our daughter. And I'll be honest, I thought a new baby might change something, might soften us towards each other, might remind us what we had built together. For 2 weeks after Amara arrived, Daniel was present, helpful. He woke for nighttime feeds. He bought me puff puff from a roadside seller one Sunday morning because I mentioned I was craving it.
2 weeks. Then his phone started ringing late at night again. He would step outside to take calls. He would return with a calm face and no explanation. I started noticing things. A change in his cologne, a new shirt I had not bought. He started going to the gym, which he had never done before in our marriage. But the thing that broke me, the thing I have never been able to forget, was a photo. It happened by accident. Toby was playing with Daniel's old phone, a spare he kept in the bedroom drawer. I had let him because it had some children's games on it and I needed 30 minutes of peace to bathe Amara. Toby ran to me with the phone. He said, "Mommy, who is this auntie?" I took the phone. On the screen was a photo. A woman. She was maybe 26, 27. She was sitting in a restaurant, the kind of upscale restaurant Daniel occasionally took me to on special occasions. She was laughing. She was beautiful. But that was not what stopped my heart. What stopped my heart was that I recognized the restaurant, because I recognized the table. It was the same corner table where Daniel had taken me for our 6th anniversary. Same arrangement of candles, same cream tablecloth, same view of the window. He had taken her to our table, our anniversary table. I stood there holding that phone with Amara dripping wet in my arms, and I could not move. Toby looked up at me and said, "Mommy, are you okay?" I said yes. I put the phone back in the drawer. I finished bathing Amara. I made dinner. I smiled when Daniel came home, and I did not say a word. I still regret that decision till today. I want to stop here and explain something to you, because some of you might be wondering, why did she stay? Why did she say nothing? Why did she keep pretending? I need you to understand the full picture. It was not just pride. It was not just fear. It was everything together. A weight so heavy that you cannot see the door anymore. My mother had told me the day before my wedding, "Sandra, marriage is not easy. Whatever happened inside that house, you carry it. You do not drag your husband to the street. You do not give people a reason to talk." My church had told me that a praying wife could fix any man, that submission and patience were my weapons. My friends, the few I had, were all either single and looking for husbands or married and pretending just like me. There was no one I could tell the full truth to without feeling judged or pitied or without it spreading. And Daniel was skilled at making me feel like I was the problem. Every time I tried to raise a concern, he would turn it. "Why are you always suspicious? Why can't you trust? Do you know how many men do worse? I don't beat you, I don't starve you. What exactly is your complaint?" And because I had no bruises to show, no visible wounds, just a quiet suffocation, I started to believe maybe he was right. Maybe I was too sensitive. So I poured myself into the children, into my work. I had moved to a bigger agency by then, project manager, decent salary. Into church, into being Sandra Adeyemi, the woman everyone admired. But the truth was, I was unraveling. I had stopped sleeping deeply. I would wake at 3 in the morning and lie still, listening to the sound of the house, thinking, how long can I do this? I had started losing weight without trying. My colleagues asked if I was on a diet. I said yes. I had started crying in the car on my way to work and composing myself before I walked into the office. I was a woman splitting into two halves, the public Sandra and the real Sandra. And the real Sandra was exhausted. And then, in November 2023, something happened that changed everything. It started with an invitation. The invitation was to a dinner, one of those big social events, a 40th birthday celebration for a Lagos businessman named Chief Emeka Okafor. Daniel knew him from business. We had attended one of his events before, years earlier. Daniel said we had to go. It was important for his connections. I wore a deep wine-colored dress. I had my hair done. I reminded myself how to smile. The venue was a private event space in Victoria Island, crystal chandeliers, live band, the kind of room where everyone is performing. I was standing by the drinks table, holding a glass of Chapman, making conversation with a woman I had just met. Her name was Grace, wife of one of Chief Emeka's business partners. Grace said something that made my blood go cold. She said, casually, the way people say things they do not know are dangerous. "Oh, you are Daniel Adeyemi's wife? I see. Have you met Evelyn?" I said, "Evelyn?" She said, "Evelyn Balogun. She's here tonight. She and Daniel have worked together for a long time. I'm sure you know her." I said, I did not. Something shifted in Grace's face, just briefly. She recovered quickly and said, "Oh, she's in property too. Very lovely woman." She changed the subject immediately. But I did not change with her. My mind stayed on that name, Evelyn. I excused myself politely and walked through the crowd slowly, the way you walk when your legs feel disconnected from your body. I found Daniel near the far end of the room, laughing with a group of men. And standing slightly to his left, turned away from me, was a woman in a gold dress. She turned as I approached, and I knew. I knew from the way his laugh shifted just slightly when he saw me coming. I knew from the half second of something that crossed his face. Not guilt, worse than guilt, calculation, the face of a man deciding quickly what version of reality to present. He smiled at me, wide, warm, the smile I had seen him practice 1,000 times. "Darling, come, let me introduce you." He introduced her as a colleague, Evelyn Balogun. She was beautiful, she was composed, she extended her hand to me and smiled with the confidence of a woman who had nothing to fear. And in that moment, standing in that glittering room surrounded by laughter and music, I understood everything. I shook her hand. I smiled. I said, "It's nice to meet you." And I died a little inside. But what I didn't know then was that Evelyn was not just his colleague, and the truth, when it fully came out, was so much worse than I had imagined. 3 days after that party, I received a message on Instagram. The account had no profile picture, no followers, one post, just created. The message said, "I think you deserve to know the truth. I am not your enemy, but there are things you do not know about your husband and Evelyn Balogun. If you want to understand, meet me. I will explain." It gave a time and a place, a small cafe in Surulere. I stared at that message for 2 full days. Every rational part of me said, "Do not go. This is a trap. This is someone playing games." But there was another part of me, the part that had been awake at 3 in the morning for years, that said, "You already know. You just need permission to stop pretending you don't." I went. The person waiting for me was a young woman, mid-20s. Her name was Joy. She was Evelyn's former personal assistant. She had been fired 3 months ago. She said it was because she had accidentally seen something she was not supposed to see. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents. Property documents. 4 of them. Properties registered in Lagos. 2 in Ikoli, 1 in Lekki, 1 in Banana Island. All 4 were jointly owned by Daniel Adeyemi and Evelyn Balogun. I looked up at Joy. She said, "They have been together for 7 years. Evelyn is not his colleague. She is his partner in business and in everything else." 7 years. Toby was 9. Amara was 6. This woman had been in my husband's life since before Amara was born, since before Toby was even a toddler. 7 years. I said, "Are you sure?" Joy opened another page in the folder. It was a photo. Not an old photo, dated just 6 weeks earlier. Daniel and Evelyn at a private beach house, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing, easy, comfortable, like people who had been together a long, long time. I closed the folder. Joy said softly, "There is one more thing." I did not want to hear it, but I nodded. She said, "The duplex in Lekki that you live in, it is not fully paid for. Daniel used it as collateral for a loan 18 months ago. He has defaulted on the payments. The bank has already begun proceedings." I felt the room tilt. I said, "What?" She said, "I am sorry." I sat in that cafe for a long time after Joy left. I sat there and I thought about all the Sunday mornings, all the Instagram posts, all the smiles, all the years I had spent protecting an image, a life that had been hollow all along. I thought about my children sleeping in a house that was about to be taken. I thought about my mother saying, "Men like this don't grow on trees." And then I thought, what do I do now? I went home that day and I did what I had always done. I cooked dinner. I helped the children with their homework. I sat at the table across from Daniel and I watched him eat. He made a joke. I laughed. He told a story about something that happened at work. I nodded. He said, "You look tired. Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." Fine. That word had been my shield and my prison for 11 years. But something had shifted inside me. A wire that had been stretched too tight for too long had finally, quietly snapped. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering information, carefully, quietly, the way a woman gathers evidence when she knows she has one chance and cannot afford to be wrong. I called a lawyer, a woman named Mrs. Olawale, recommended by a colleague. I told her everything. She told me my rights. She told me what I could protect and what I could not. I called my older sister, Gloria, who lived in Abuja. I had not told Gloria anything real about my marriage in years, but I told her now, everything, for the first time. Gloria was quiet on the phone for a very long time. Then she said, "Sandra, how long?" I said, 11 years. She started crying. I did not cry. I had passed the crying stage. I was in the quiet, cold place beyond tears, the place where you start making plans. I moved money from the joint account slowly, not all at once, Mrs. Olawale had advised me. Small amounts over 2 weeks, into an account Daniel did not know about. I spoke to the children's school discreetly. I did not explain. I just updated my contact details as the primary guardian. I was building an exit, quietly, carefully. And then, before I was ready, the world blew everything open. Because here is the thing about secrets. You can manage them, but you cannot control who else is managing them too. It was a Wednesday morning. I was in the office, a meeting about a client campaign, when my phone started vibrating repeatedly on the table. I ignored the first 3 buzzes. On the 4th, I glanced down. WhatsApp notifications, multiple, from different people. My cousin, a former colleague, someone from church, my mother. The messages were all different, but they said the same thing. "Sandra, have you seen this?" with a link. During the break, I opened it. It was a blog post on one of the popular Lagos gossip platforms, Lagos Insider, the kind of site that published verified scandal alongside rumor and did not always separate the two. The headline read, "Real estate executive Daniel Adeyemi under fire, bank fraud allegations, secret family revealed." I sat in the bathroom floor of my office building and I read every word.
Joy had not only spoken to me, she had also spoken to a journalist. The article had everything: the properties, the bank loan default, Evelyn, photos. But there was something in the article I did not know, something Joy had kept back when she met me. Evelyn Balogun had a child, a boy 5 years old. His name, according to the article, was Daniel Jr. I read that and I could not breathe. 5 years old. While I was pregnant with Amara, while I was carrying our daughter, Daniel had been building another family. My phone was ringing. I could not answer. I sat on that bathroom floor, the same way I had sat on a bathroom floor 11 years ago holding a newborn Toby, and I stared at the wall. The article was already spreading. By 10 a.m. that morning, it had been shared over 4,000 times. By noon, people who had commented relationship goals on our Instagram post were now sharing the blog link. My phone was full of calls from people I had not spoken to in years. Daniel called me 7 times. I did not pick up. He sent a message. It said, "Sandra, I can explain. Please don't do anything. Please come home so we can talk." I looked at that message for a long time. 11 years, 4,000 Instagram likes, 50 guests at a car presentation with a Red Bull, a marriage that was a set, a house that did not belong to us, a husband who had another child. And he wanted to explain? I went home that evening, not because I forgave him, not because I wanted to hear his explanation. I went home because of Toby and Amara. They were in the living room when I arrived. Toby was on his tablet, Amara was drawing in her notebook. They looked up when I walked in. They smiled at me. Those two faces were the only real thing in my life. I kissed both of them. I told them to go to their room and do their homework. I told them I needed to speak with Daddy about something. Daniel was in the bedroom. He was sitting on the edge of the bed. He had not changed from his work clothes. He looked up when I walked in. For the first time in 11 years, he did not have a prepared face. He looked undone. He said, "Sandra." I said, "Stop." He stopped. I said, "I am not going to shout. I am not going to cry. I am going to say what I have to say and you are going to listen." He nodded. I said, "I know about Evelyn. I know about the properties. I know about the loan. I know about the child." Something collapsed in his face. I said, "I have already spoken to a lawyer. I have already protected what I can protect. I am not going to destroy myself trying to save something that was never what I thought it was." He looked at the floor. I said, "For 11 years, I protected your image. I protected this family's image. I smiled when I wanted to scream. I stayed when I should have left. I gave you every year of my youth to something that was a lie." He looked at the floor. I said, "I am done pretending." That night, I moved into the guest room. I called Gloria in Abuja and I told her I was ready. I looked at my children's sleeping faces before I turned off their lights. And for the first time in 11 years, when I lay down in the dark, I did not hear that small voice asking, "How long can I do this?" Because I had my answer. No more. No more performances. No more. But here's the thing I need to tell you, because this story is not over. The next morning, I woke up to something I did not see coming. Something that made me realize that Daniel was not the only one who was keeping secrets. Something that made me question everything I thought I had figured out. And when I tell you what I found, you will understand why I am still not free. End of part 1. What would you have done if you were me? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you know someone living behind a smile, share this story. They need to know they are not alone.